Be awesome. Now, to introduce the fine gentleman behind me, and in my opinion, now is the perfect time to explore investment real estate and brokerage in general. Over the past couple of quarters, interest rates have skyrocketed, and the macroeconomic environment has begun to deteriorate. Many investors are expecting real estate assets to reprice over the coming months, which sets the backdrop for our conversation today. So without further ado, we're excited to welcome John and Jay from Colliers International. Take it away, Tanner.
Yeah. Hi everyone, I'm Tanner. I'm Vice President with the Real Estate Club here. So yeah, you guys want to introduce yourself, where you went to school, where you're from, what do you do now?
I'm John, so I'm from Victoria here, and then I went to university in Calgary at UC. I took business there, and then I was working for a bit in Calgary actually for Pepsi, and then got a job out with a developer here in commercial real estate. So did kind of a diverse role there, and then just made the switch over to Colliers and brokerage in February.
My name is Jay. I am actually born and raised in Victoria. Went to UVic just like you guys. Graduated Gustafson back in 2017. So I'm well aware of what you guys are going through and Halloween coming up here, or last week, whatever it was. I've been with Colliers since 2017. I was 2 internships with Colliers. Got my license while I was at Colliers. Been a broker for almost 5 years now.
Cool. Yeah, so what does Colliers actually do?
So we at Colliers, there's different avenues, and everyone will tell you different things, but your Colliers brand and platform, it is an enterprise. There's different ways of commercial real estate, different avenues of getting commercial real estate. We're on the brokerage side. So what we do on a daily basis, we're with brokers involved in the transactions. So we're dealing with buyers, sellers, landlords, tenants, leasing, consulting, all that sort of thing. There's property management. So if you guys are interested in property management, it's a whole different avenue. So managing buildings, managing tenants, and appraisal as well. So we in-house appraisal team as well. So if you guys are interested in appraisal, we offer that as well. We have a Vancouver team that's just consulting. We have about 10, 15 groups that just do consulting for landlords and developers. And then we do have a team out in Toronto that does capital markets. So capital markets meaning typically on the larger side of transactions. That teams will involve on deals anywhere from $80 to $100 million. So if we're dealing on a deal size that big, we'll typically bring the capital markets team.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. So I'm sure everyone, like you mentioned, you did a couple co-ops.
Yep.
I'm sure everyone's wondering how would we be able to get involved eventually. Does
Yeah.
it look similar to that, or?
Yeah, Colliers, we were very active on getting co-ops into our team. I was fortunate enough to do two co-ops there. I know we offer, I think, 2 a year. I think it's either just reaching out to us brokers, reaching out to our management team as well, Tyler Dillon, MD. So I think we offer a co-op every summer. That's kind of May to August, which works out well for you guys for your courses. I think we also offer one in January coming up as well. I think it's 1 or 2, sometimes 3 co-ops a year we offer.
Cool. And what got you guys into it? What interested you about real estate in the first place?
Yeah. So I was kind of wanted to do it, not so much, but when I was out and working for Pepsi and Calgary, I really didn't like it because I was doing more marketing and stuff. And then I knew a guy who his dad was a developer out here, and they got rid of one person. They were looking to bring someone on, so I just ended up getting a job with them. And then I really did like it, but we were a development company, so I was more on the buy side. So I would actually work with brokers a lot. And then through that, I was just working with these 2 guys who are at Colliers now and on some deals and stuff. And then they just kind of said, "Have you ever thought about getting your license and getting on this side of it?" And yeah, I was really happy I did it.
So I guess breaking it down for you guys in very simple terms, what we do and offer. I'm sure you guys are all familiar with finance and bankers, investment banking. Just know investment bankers and banking, what they do in your business.
I think some might be, some may.
Yeah, so investment bankers in the finance world, they'll transact companies.
Okay.
Right? So you could say we're the investment bankers of commercial real estate. So what we do on a daily basis is transact malls, we construct office buildings.
Okay, I see.
Buyer and seller, putting them together, marketing properties, on a completely different scale.
Right,
So we work on both the buy side and the sell side.
okay.
So I can still technically work with the guys I've worked for, either, yeah, help them buy properties, sell them, and then also lease their vacant spaces.
Okay. So I guess that's kind of the nitty-gritty of what you guys are actually doing on a day-to-day. What are some of the highlights that you guys find on your day-to-day?
Highlights day to day. I think when you're first starting off in commercial real estate, you're doing a lot of grunt work.
Right.
So in your first year to 3-4 years, you're doing a lot of underwriting, you're doing a lot of cold calls, you're doing a lot of research. And I think for me, one of the biggest highlights for me was my first cold calls I made was to finally transact that property, which took me about a year to do, but to show that I could make a call in my first couple of years, explain the process to the client, and then transact it for them. I think that built my confidence for sure. The only way you're going to build confidence in this industry is being involved in as many transactions as possible. It's just like anything for you guys. If you're not comfortable with public speaking, the only way to get better at public speaking is by more public speaking. It's pretty straightforward in that sense. So just like commercial real estate, just like a lot of jobs, just more transactions you're doing, more involved you are, just the better you're doing.
Do you have a similar outlook, or?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't been in it for as long as Jay has, but yeah, I think just like what the highlights are, I think like when you do the thrill of actually getting a deal is there's no really there's no feeling like it, whereas kind of when you're just working a 9 to 5 or working for someone, even though we are with the firm, it's like there's no really limit as to how much you can make or what you can do. It's like you can call a $20 million shopping center that has a big fee to it, right? And you never know, like if it goes well, and that's a big payday for you. So it's kind of like winning the lottery in a sense.
We're not.
If it goes well, but yeah.
Probably, let's probably do that. On that, so we aren't. So when you first start off with a lot of these commercial brokerages, whether it's Colliers or whatever one you guys do, just pursue Colliers or other ones. Everyone will offer different training programs. The first couple of years, they usually give you a base salary. It won't be a whole lot of money, but kind of pay the bills for that. But then, how you start earning the real money is when you become a brokerage and full commission.
Right.
So I've been commissioned for the last 5 years, and it's not always going to be great for you. COVID happened, interest rates are slowing the market down right now. But you got to you're doing commercial real estate for the long term, not for the short term. How I've always seen it is, if you're why should someone trust you to sell their $10 million property?
Yeah.
So you got to add that value to them over a 2, 3, 4 year timeline. You can't make a call tomorrow and get that listed.
Right.
It's building that relationship. It's giving them information. It's following up with them. Take a cup of coffee. Take it for lunch. Just touching base with them as much as possible.
Yeah.
And when they're going to sell, they're going to sell.
Yeah.
And that listing shouldn't come to you.
For sure.
I think that's the mistake I probably made early on, is I was just thinking like super transactionally with all the calls, and then you might get lucky every now and then, but you're gonna be way better off trying to establish a relationship and add some actual value to that first call, rather than just, hey, do you want to sell?
I think that goes with any right?
Yeah, I think,
Yeah.
I hate to bash on residential realtors, but they're very much more transactional than we are.
For sure.
If you want to make quick 10 grand, go work residential. If you want to work on some bigger stuff, if you want to build relationships, work on some portfolio deals, work on some larger transaction stuff, it's more commercial.
And did that ever kind of cross your guys' mind to start out in residential, or?
For me, no, not really. When I first started, to be honest, I didn't know what commercial real estate was. I had no idea. I was cold turkey thrown into it. I did data for a year. But I think I was talking to you guys earlier, every Tuesday morning at Colliers, we have a broker meeting. So what that is every Tuesday morning, I was like 21, 22 years old, still in university, like 3rd or 4th year, and we had a rule. It was like, if you want to be in that meeting, you couldn't be past 7:45 every Tuesday. If you're late, even by a minute, the door's closed, it's $20 to get in. And in that meeting, I get so much knowledge from these brokers that have been doing it for 20 years.
Right.
Of brokers. size of deals they're doing and how much they're making on these deals. It's just like, you can't, as a 21-year-old, like, holy shit, you actually just make that much money like on that one transaction.
Yeah.
So being in that environment on a weekly basis, I was like, you know what, these guys aren't working that hard. Like, they work, sure, 7 a.m. to 5 p.m., Monday to Friday. A lot of these guys aren't working on Saturdays. So I think I liked the sales aspect. I liked the team environment. I liked having my weekends. So I think that's what really drew me to Colliers.
Yourself?
Yeah, it was a bit different for me. I just kind of felt like when I was working for the development company, it was just a bit too structured, almost in a sense where it's like, okay, you work here for 3 years, then you get this bonus, and it's, no matter kind of the results that you, no matter what you do, you're kind of capped in a sense. Whereas in commercial real estate, it's all on you. If you don't make any money, that's based on your results, right?
Yeah.
And if you make a lot, that's because you got great results. So there's really no excuse.
Yeah, at the end of the day, if you had a great year, you can kind of pat yourself on the back and say, "I had a great year." Go do it again next year. There's nothing stopping you from beating yourself next year. If you had a really bad year, the only person you can blame is yourself.
Right.
You can't blame anybody else. You can't say, "Oh, I was unlucky." It's just like, I guess it's sales at the end of the day. You're in the big world. You gotta make those decisions. Or vice versa, you could do a great year and just keep it going.
Yeah, I think, like, at least for myself, I'm sure a lot of you guys too, in school, that's kind of what I was looking for, something to like be able to just, my effort or my skill is rewarded correctly, right? And when you have those caps, you don't really get that. So clearly that's pretty.
I guess for me, when I first left UVic here my 4th year, I was interviewing with Colliers and I was interviewing with CIBC Commercial Banking. It's funny, they're both in the same building downtown.
Yeah.
So I think one day I was upstairs interviewing at Colliers, the other day I was downstairs interviewing at CIBC. And I distinctly remember this. I had a conversation with my dad. I got offers from both. I had a research job at Colliers that was paying like 40 grand a year.
Sure.
Nothing crazy. But in CIBC gave me an offer for like 75 grand a year. And being 21, 22, I was like, shit, that's a decent amount of money. Like, maybe I'll save some, I'll be traveling, and that. But something told me, like, even in 5 years, like, I'll probably cap at 100.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So I was like, why would I limit my skill? I know I'm a people person. I know I'm a salesperson. Why would I limit myself to 100 grand a year in the next 5, 10 years when I can? Sure, I might not make as much money in my first 3 to 5 years at Colliers, but I'm not capping myself off for the next 30 years.
So like you said, it's a long term, right?
Totally.
And I mean, there's a lot of good things. I'm sure there's a few bad things. Can you guys speak on that a little bit? Anything that's kind of the downside on the day to day, or just overall? I mean, right now, obviously, there's a few things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like, like what Julian brought up with the interest rates, it's kind of out of our control. And for example, like it happened so quick, like 6 months ago, 6 to 8 months ago, you could have sold a building for maybe at a 3 cap, and people were borrowing, at 2%, 3%, right? They're borrowing at 2%, they could actually, it would work out. But now it's like they're borrowing at 5.5%. Your deal is just something that you have listed at, that cap rate just doesn't make sense. So it's.
Can I stop you real quick?
Yeah.
And can you explain the cap rate for anyone that might not know?
Yeah. So your cap rate is essentially, I guess, how do I put it?
It's your yield.
Yeah.
It's your going in yield on your investment. So it's what, as an investor, you guys are investors, you're looking at a property, you want to, obviously a cash flowing property, you calculate that yield on your net income, divided by the purchase price of your property, and that would be what cap rate. So historically, cap rates pre-COVID were, I don't know, they were 5, 4.5. Every asset class is a little different. Industrial was always a little bit higher, at 6, 5.5, 6. Multifamily is always trading with risk cap, because the least amount of risk in multifamily. So the multifamily we're trading 3, 3.25. I think Vancouver is trading sub 3s.
Yeah.
Right. So it really comes down to your risk tolerance as an investor. The less risky the asset, the lower the cap, the higher risky the asset. Like a retail strip mall now, no one wants retail. You can go through another COVID tomorrow, and all your tenants can't pay rent, so you rent a higher yield on your investment. So that's what kind of your cap rate is.
And so if your returns at say you're bringing in a 3% cap, that's your return on your money that you're investing in. But then when you're borrowing, so then your cost of the debt, if you're borrowing at 5% and your return's only 3%, you can see there's that 2%.
The delta of 2%.
That you're losing money
That
on,
you're
right?
eating.
So that's
That's
what
investment.
happens when the rates have gone up, that stuff just doesn't pencil out, and people are saying, there's no way I'm gonna buy that, and they're backing out of deals, and like, you could think you have a deal done, and then, like that happens, and then it falls through, right? And that's, you're kind of banking on, that deal going through, and then you don't get paid, and that's just, who knows when they're gonna come down to, right? So,
And that kind of holds true to, oh yeah.
Is the
Question,
cap rate,
yeah.
is the cap rate just the expected like rental income, or is it also the expected like increase in value of the property? Or both together?
No, your cap rate, you typically calculate a cap rate on year one income, on your base. You typically stabilize your cap on your net rent.
but it is used to calculate the total value in a sense, like if, say, if you bought something at a 4 cap, and then for some reason, let's say the interest rates go down, you could sell it at a 3 cap, that way your value would increase tremendously, because I guess how you find, it's like a formula, you take your net operating income, divide it by your cap rate, and that'll give you your value. So if you're selling, you always want to have a lower cap rate, so it'll be a higher sales price, but if you're buying, you want a higher cap rate.
So that's one of the things, I guess, interest rates going up is hurt you guys a little bit. Is there anything else?
Interest rates obviously are affecting the investment side of things. They're affecting kind of buyer purchasing power. People are kind of sitting on their hands a little bit more so than ever right now because they're just uncertain where the market's going in the next 6 to a year.
Yeah.
I guess part of your question there was the bad stuff. Besides stuff that we can't control,
Right.
there's so many aspects of a commercial deal that can go wrong.
Okay.
So you may think
Or one you would see your environmental deal that.
oh yeah. So this is one of mine. It was back in 2019. I just cold called this project. It's a piece of land, about 20,000 square foot in View Royal. And I met with the owner. I think I've been chasing him down for 6 months. You pick up the phone, hang up, pick up the phone, hang up. And one day I called him and said, hey, can I eat Starbucks? And sure, so we met at Starbucks at Mayfair. And I gave him a valuation, just kind of back. I don't even think I had a valuation ready. I didn't think it was the first time meeting him.
Yeah.
And so that's why sometimes you meet somebody asks you to meet, you gotta be ready. So you gotta know what you're getting yourself into. They may ask you about a comp that's sold down the street. They may ask you something that you don't know, but you always gotta make sure you know enough. So luckily, I've been chasing this guy for 6 months, so I was pretty ready for this meeting. I hope so. So we chased him down, met him at Starbucks. I gave him a back of the napkin valuation. Said, yeah, I said, drop in the paperwork. Let's get it listed for sale. I asked him all the questions. Hey, do you have any environmentals on file? So environmental just means when you're doing commercial properties, especially development land, you got to go to phase 1, phase 2. So what that is, you hire a third-party environmental consultant, and they do an environmental study on the project. So phase 1 is about $2,000 to $3,000. And what they do, they don't do any drilling. They just kind of check the property, historicals, see if there's any gas stations on site, if there's any cause for contamination. And he told me there wasn't. I suspected there was because I know there was a gas station there probably 20 years ago. So he lied to me right away, and then we take it to market, and the buyer put it under contract, we accepted the offer, and they started poking around. They did their own environmental study. Looked, it comes out that it was a gas station. There was 2 oil tanks under the property that he didn't tell me, didn't disclose to me. And there's probably $500,000 worth of contamination costs that need to be dealt with. And he said, I'm not paying for it. So I'm stuck there. I'm only 22, 23 at the time. Probably one of my first or second deal ever. My co-broker wasn't very smart. Didn't help me in any way, so I was kind of stuck with myself. Had leaned on my end.
Just don't say any names.
As long as I don't say names, it's fine. Don't want to bus. So they weren't, and the person that was working with me, they've been in the industry a little bit longer, and they had no idea what to do either, so I was kind of picking up everything, learning everything on the go. So it took us probably about 6 months to negotiate a deal where the buyer would proceed with the sale contingent that they could extend the closing basically a year and a half out.
Okay.
So that they could clean the site, pay for it out of pocket, and rezone it. So by the time I first called the guy, met with the guy, and then transacted the property, it was probably 2 years. 2 years from start to finish. So there's that's one nightmare example of deals that go sideways that they don't disclose information to you. You're hoping you're gonna get paid in the next 2-3 months, and you're waiting around for 2 years for a paycheck.
And in that situation,
Sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna let you continue, but with your environmental consultant,
Yeah.
did they not find the oil tanks underneath the property?
So
or
they-
were
so
they
they-
just not looking for it at that time?
No, so I asked the vendor the question. Typically, hopefully you expect your vendor to be transparent with you. Why would you lie, kind of thing. So I asked the question in the meeting. He said, "No, I have nothing on file," and I believed him. And maybe I was too naive, maybe too green to believe him. And the buyer, when we got the property under contract, they had, I think, a 60 or 90-day due diligence period to run through the conditions. And they, as you hope every buyer would, on a property like this, do your own environmental study. So they did that, and they poked around, and they found their phase one indicated there was, when they did a scanning of the property, that there was oil tanks. One had been removed, and one was still underground.
Okay. And you're saying phase one, so what would phase two, phase three, or how are
Yeah, so the first step for development properties is typically phase one. And how these are negotiated on these deals, every deal is different. Sometimes the buyer will take it on as part of the due diligence to take on phase one. We always tell our seller clients to do your own phase one, so you control it, you have it. When you transact a property, most buyers need financing. And for financing purposes, banks aren't going to lend to you if you don't have a clean phase one for a development project. They'll make you go get one. It's always good to control your own environmental. So this buyer came along, did their own phase one, and then so that's about $2,000-3,000. And then your phase two is your next step, and that's when they bring the drill. They can do active drilling on site. So they'll drill down, they'll test samples. They can take 8 to 10 boreholes on different where they think there's contamination, and that can be up to $15,000 to $20,000.
And that's like one of the riskiest things. Like, you see, laundromats can
nightmare.
never be sold because there's a
Always contamination.
So, and it can spread too. And so you're on the hook to clean that up yourself. So it can be like millions of dollars.
So the biggest, I think it was like about a month there, right? I didn't sleep that well. But the biggest scare, honestly, the biggest scare was if that oil tank had leaked onto the road, onto the main road of Island Highway and hump in there, that bill would have been probably close to $1 million. And probably a deal breaker for the buyer.
yeah, so that actually approved for you. Now, is there a time that you just kind of leave it be?
Like I was just like, screw this deal kind of thing? Or?
I mean, maybe not you, but the buyer or someone or the seller backs out.
I don't know. I think everyone was so invested in the deal.
Sure.
The buyer wanted another project, and you only wanted to just finish one down 2 blocks down, so he was very keen on the area. The seller was an old retired man. He wanted to cash out. So he didn't care if it was a year from now or 6 months from now or tomorrow. He just wanted a guaranteed paycheck for his properties. I almost worked, I hate to say it worked out well. It almost worked out well where the buyer extended conditions for a year and a half, cleaned it up, rezoned it, and then bought it. So the buyer actually was very clever in that way, that they paid for a site that was rezoned, clean, at an unzoned value.
Yeah.
But that was the way he got around justifying the deal makes sense for him.
Right.
Because who's going to take on $500,000 of contamination costs? There's no upside for him, right? My seller, first thing he told me was, he's like, I get that there was contamination, but I'm not paying it. So we had to be creative in how we did it.
Saw questions back there?
When it came up and the seller found out that it was contaminated, does that reflect poorly on you as a broker?
100%. 100%. I felt like I wasn't doing my job right. And it was, I don't think that there's much more I could have done. I asked the right questions. I asked, hey, do you have an active environmental on file? I know historically there's gas station in this area. And he said no to me. So, and when you're just listing your property and disclosing your property for sale, you typically have to go through this conversation with the buyer. And luckily enough, I said, hey, I asked the vendor this, but I'm not certain. You guys should do phase 1.
And go ahead.
So as a broker, like how much time do you allocate to like the groundwork, and then how much time do you allocate with your clients getting the deal done?
Yeah, it comes down to however works best for you. I'd say our team, we're up pretty early in the office. Like some guys are in the office at 5:30 in the morning. Some guys are in. I usually come in 7:30. Between 7 to 9, no one's back again. No one's calling you. Your client's probably not up yet, so you can do your paperwork, proposals, offers 7 to 9, 9:30. But typically 9:30 your phone starts ringing, emails start firing off, right? So for me, what works best is 9:30 to 12. Go do your emails, do your calls, go meet clients. And in the afternoon, whatever you have to do, if it's more paperwork, do your paperwork, or go out in the field and door knock, prospect, take clients for lunch, do whatever you gotta do. It ultimately comes down to whatever works best for you.
Yeah, so we talked a little bit about, obviously that's one of the horrors that could happen, but bringing it back to kind of the general economic environment right now, do you guys, either personally or as a company, have any predictions of where things are headed, or obviously in the commercial real estate market, but if you want to speak on anything else, I'm sure everyone's more than happy to hear.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard some people say that they keep, I don't know what's going to happen, but I think it might raise rates again. I think on December 13th is what they're planning. And who knows if they'll raise it again after that. I've heard some people say that they need to keep raising them to meet the rate of inflation, which would be pretty scary because I think that's at like 8% right now, something like that. So if you're borrowing at 8%, like I don't see anything selling for it. No one would sell their property at an 8% cap rate. Like they would just, I just don't think they would, unless they have to, right? But there will be people who, like we were saying, maybe locked in in 2019, 3 years ago at 2%, and then now they have a renewal coming up. Then they're borrowing at 8%, they're going to be forced to sell at a huge loss. So there will be those. But in Victoria, it's a lot of like older money we're finding, and not a lot of people actually have, debt. There is obviously a lot of people who do, but a lot of the bigger properties, they built up so much equity in their buildings that they don't really have that much debt. So it's probably going to be it might be pretty slow.
Victoria,
so if you're not forced to sell, why would you? Over the long term, hopefully they're going to come down,
Victoria historically has always been protected around here. Even the pandemic, we were a lot of the assets, sure, office and retail took a little bit of hit, but the industrial asset I think still performed kind of better.
Right.
Same with multifamily. Multifamily is very, very active. So even in tougher times, with interest rates or pandemics, you're over a 10 or 15, 20 year time horizon, you're going to see blips in the market.
Right.
And typically when you're investing so much capital in these projects or buildings, you're not looking at it for a 2 year time horizon, you're looking at it over a 20 year time horizon.
Yeah.
Right, so a lot of these guys can make do with those long-term goals and objectives. On the debt side, we're seeing deals now and maybe some more creative solutions happening where I know you guys have some partner deals right now.
Yeah, you probably just gonna get there with the vendor financing. So if people still want to sell, a lot of people do it at times, they can offer, they'll pretty much feed the banks, so they'll give you the mortgage.
So kind of take back mortgages or
Those are making sense, yeah.
So if I'm a seller and I locked at 3% and John's the buyer, instead of going to a traditional bank at 5.5%, 6%, I'll be the bank. I'm selling the property to him, but I'll give you my debt at 3%. So he can take on the existing mortgage.
Yeah. You guys are seeing that more and more?
Yeah. If you have an assumable mortgage that has like a significant amount on it, then it doesn't really affect the value, right? Because you can just assume, if he's at 3%, I can still assume that instead of paying 8% or whatever it's going to be.
Yeah, I another case example for you actually, There's a deal I'm working on right now. I think Todd probably working with me.
But yeah,
Yeah, I won't say any names. It's deal's still ongoing. It's actively on the field since it's probably October last year. But sizable industrial project, about $4 million. It's been under contract since probably April, March of this year. We had 5 offers. I was listing 8. We had 5 offers on it. Picked the best group. Was what we're asking, and the buyer came along and was like, yeah, my financing's done, don't worry about that. But there's a notation on title that the seller was 90 million in. He did some work in the building that wasn't up to code, didn't get a BP for it, and we're still sitting for that. That's one issue, but the separate issue was in March, April, the buyer's financing was 70% loan to value. Just traditional bank. Now, as of October this year, his bank has come back to him and said, we're only offering a loan to value of 30%.
Well,
so he has to come up with 40% more
Cash out of pocket, which equates about $1.5 million in cash. So that one deal where he's a high net worth guy, he probably has the cash. It's not about having the cash, but going and getting debt that you can service, right? So for him to go to the bank to quote him 6 months ago at a 60-70% loan to value, now to stay up to moving up to 30%. It's a big hit to him. Potentially could change the deal. Could be a cost, could be a price grind in the deal to make up for the extra cash that coming up with. So I think we're in for a definitely interesting time on the commercial side of things on these kind of creative deals. Right.
do you guys have any timelines you would spitball?
Yeah, I don't want to quote it on camera. I hopefully, fingers crossed, knock on wood, I would say summer next year, summer to fall next year, things start stabilizing.
Yeah.
That's the timelines we've been told through our capital markets team.
Sure.
But again, nothing set. Things can change tomorrow.
But stuff still is moving like in Victoria at, like there is stuff moving still at lower cap rates than what people are borrowing at. If there's, good upside on it, if it's not just a pure investment income, then deals can still make sense. You're more creative. And,
Yeah, just structuring, and I think that's what's very important on being, on having those conversations on structuring deals.
Sure.
It's not like a residential transaction where it's like, yeah, I'm a buyer or seller, let's just do the deal.
Right.
There's better takebacks, there's extended closings, there's value adds, there's assumable debt. There's different ways to add value.
I think they're gonna have a much harder time than we are in residential.
Residential.
Okay.
Compared to
Yeah.
commercial.
Yeah. You guys are obviously working with investors a lot of the time. Do you yourselves are looking into real estate investing as kind of a lane for yourself? I know, like at least myself, that's something that I'm interested in.
Yeah.
Sure, something else. So.
Yeah, definitely. I just bought my first condo, so I'm put a lot of cash towards the condo right now, and we're kind of looking to buy a house in the next couple of years. But I think at some point for sure, I'll be looking. I'm not personally myself. I'm not as interested in the residential real estate investing. I want to, if I can. I don't know the stock market. I'm not a stock market guy. It's not my expertise right now. To be frank, it's upside down.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much money I've lost in the stock market. I mean, I want to stop looking, so I'm scared to look. But what I know and what I do on a daily basis is commercial real estate.
Yeah.
And I focus on land and industrial properties. So at some point, my plan is to be part of somebody's one and we can buy it. Yeah. That's my long-term.
No, same with me, I think. Yeah, because if we actually know, we're in it day to day, we know how to add value to it, we know what a good deal is, and eventually to be doing that ourselves. We see how much money our clients make.
Yeah.
It'd be nice.
Totally.
Yeah. As long as the numbers work right.
Yeah, exactly.
100%. A couple of questions.
You kind of explain the job like an entrepreneur. However, you're still working under a company name, not your own name. Your profits are determinable to your performance.
Yeah.
How much of that is all yours? Because you're still working for a company. So, what are you entrepreneurs? You're entrepreneurs within a company then, and is it still super beneficial?
So it is. So they pay. Colliers covers all of our marketing costs. for all of our research costs. We have like support staff too, who make our brochures and do other things. And then we give Colliers, we split like a percentage of the commission.
Yes.
Yeah, but it's still, like we give, with the splits, they depend on how, I think they depend on.
Yeah, it's just different tiers. Like when
Yeah.
you hit a certain threshold, you get a bonus and you get your split goes. You make more money, so you got the bonus. I think there's different tiers throughout how much money you make, but yeah, ultimately you are an entrepreneur. Like I work for Colliers, but I gotta go bring my own business into Colliers. I'm not sure you'll get some tenant or some Colliers mandates across the country. And they're out of Toronto, but maybe somebody representing Victoria who may get called out to do that. But ultimately, you are an entrepreneur. You work for yourself.
Let me just use their resources.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
You're a
percentage of
broker
our fee.
for Colliers, and you got to go generate your business on board for a team under
You
Colliers.
still feel like an entrepreneur. Totally.
Yeah.
Okay.
Totally. It's very, very, very entrepreneurial. It's what you give is what you get out of it. There's no cap on your earnings. You can go make a great. You can have a great month. You can have a bad month. And another great month.
And there's really no risk to it too. Like besides not making any money, but like you're not gonna, it's like you're not gonna lose any. You know what I mean? It's like if you go,
That's true.
if you, like there's no real risk.
Like that
You're not
startup
gonna go
cost is
bankrupt.
not, the startup cost is kind of
Yeah,
put aside.
exactly.
Yeah, your startup cost is really step one is going into getting your BC trading services license through UBC, which we were talking about earlier, but 4 months timeline start to finish. I did mine while I was at UVic. It sucked because you got 4 or 5 courses and you got to take on another course on top of that. But if you guys do go be brokers one day, a lot of your brokerages will pay for that. And just package that into your deal, talk to your MD and say, hey, like I'm studying, I want to get my grades up, but I also want to get my real estate license. And you guys cover, and most of them will say yeah. So and they'll typically pay for your license the first year too. So just conversation, negotiation around with whoever's hiring you.
You talked about like, oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
So this is kind of going back a little bit, but I have a two-part question. Trying to go towards like, do you guys get, I'm sure you do probably get like buyers and sellers approaching Colliers? And if you do, how does that work in terms of the people that work at Colliers? Does it go off of seniority or like experience depending on the case? Or how do you guys split that up and decide to distribute the work?
Yeah, that's a really good question actually. So how commercial real estate is, there's so many avenues of commercial real estate. It's based on asset classes. So I do primarily industrial, so we do warehouse deals, we do leasing for warehouse, selling warehouses off, and some development land, as I mentioned earlier. John does more investment stuff, so he'll do some more multifamily, apartments, townhome stuff for developers. So it really comes down to who the call went to. If it came to me and maybe it's something not up my alley, I might bring John on, or I might bring Eddie on, whoever I think, it's up to you at the end of the day. Whoever I want to bring on that adds value. If I'm not an apartment guy and some apartment owner calls me up to say I got a 30-unit apartment building I want to sell off, I might not be the best guy for it, but I can bring somebody on to help me out.
And what does that look like financially if you were to get that call and bring someone else on?
The beauty of
It's
it,
all negotiable.
yeah, the beauty of it, it's all negotiated with yourself and whoever you bring on. So a lot of the deal splits. If I bring John on right now, it's negotiated. We could probably go sit in a private room together. And maybe, you know what? I brought the business in. But I want you to add more value to underwriting. I want you to take care of all the back end stuff. I'll do the client relationship stuff. This is 50-50. If you're happy with that, let's do it. Just shake your hand, off you go. Or if you think you're adding more value than he is, maybe say, well, 60-40 is better, 70. Whatever you feel is fair. Have that conversation up front with whoever you're working with. So the last thing you want is you do so much work and you think you got so much value, and then the broker you're working with says, you know what, you're a junior, you only get 5%. In most cases, when you are starting off in the first 3 years, if you're getting involved in projects, have that conversation early and be as transparent as possible.
In the bigger cities, I've heard of like guys that I think at the standard or even less.
Yeah.
Less. So it's almost like in the bigger cities, Vancouver and Toronto, they definitely do a lot more volume, but I think it's harder as a young guy starting out just because your splits are so much lower.
Well, that too, but if you go to Vancouver or like Toronto, the amount of brokers in that market,
Yeah.
I think the active commercial brokers in our market is probably like 30. It's like 30, 40 of us between the brokerages. It's not a whole lot, it's a decent amount. But you go to like Vancouver, just our Colliers office alone is 100 brokers. Colliers, just Vancouver has 100. Cushman might have 100 brokers. CBRE might have 100 brokers. JLL might have 100 brokers. Avis and Young might have 100 brokers. So just within downtown core Vancouver, you have 500 brokers that are reaching out all over. So there's more competition that way in the bigger markets. But sure, the property sizes, the transactions are much bigger too. So there's a bit of a trade-off on what you're comfortable with.
Does it get heated? And if it does,
Oh yeah.
I just mitigate that.
It gets physical.
No. Definitely gets heated. It's very much like a dog eat dog world. Yeah, you'll have conversations with brokers that the seller you might pitch on something, so you know what, like, hey, I might pitch on something, let's say you're the seller, you invite me over to your place, we have a cup of coffee, I give you your valuation. On my way out, he might be walking in from CBRE or from another brokerage. So there's very much, most vendors will shop brokers because they want to feel A, like they're important, and B, they want the best value, right? So things can get very, very heated for sure.
And something when you asked about like a bad thing that happens, sometimes like you actually can, because we only get paid based on the when a deal actually transacts. So it's like you do a bunch of free work for people, and then you bank on something transacting. And then anyway, so what happens pretty frequently is like you'll be working with this client and you get the valuation, you do all this work for them, and then maybe they say, oh screw that, I don't want to pay a fee, I'll just go direct to this buyer, and then cut the broker out of that. And so that's like a risk that.
So you never guaranteed a fee or commission, we call it. I can sign a listing with you guys tomorrow and I can do all the work and my listing could expire and somebody else might come along and pick it up and I've done 6 months of my work and I might not get compensated.
So how many things are you looking at one time to kind of offset that a little bit?
I probably as many as you can. You want to get as many balls in the air as possible. At any point in time, I might have 10 with somebody else. I'm working. Some I'm starting, 3 or 4 might be starting, 3 or 4 might be in due diligence phase, 2 or 3 might be closing, 2 or 3 I'm prospecting. At any point in time, that you want to keep as many prospects, many deals on your desk. You never know what's going to happen with the deals. Right. 8 of those might die.
Right. You had a question after?
Yeah, when you're talking about the competition between firms, is it also competitive within your own firm, or is it more like a team?
I would say, I guess 2 parts to that question. Colliers, I think it depends on the markets. Victoria, yes, I would say yes, it is, because at the end of the day, how many commercial properties are there in Victoria? Relative to our market, not that many. And I might be calling an industrial building, another guy in my office might be calling an industrial building. It happens. We're trying not to do that because it's not a good look. For one guy, two Colliers brokers calling the same property owner. So it looks like we're not organized in our own office. So I think that's why it's mentioning our sales meetings in the mornings on Tuesdays. So in that sales meeting, everyone goes around the table and shares what they're working on. Property address, what phase they are in the deal. And in that meeting, everything is kept confidential, unless you're in the broker meeting there. But if John mentions he's working on this property down the street, I know that he's working on that, I probably shouldn't call the property.
Yeah, go ahead.
So based on like the kind of dog-eat-dog mentality of that kind of working world, what would be like your biggest piece of advice or biggest takeaway that you would give to someone starting in that field? Or wanting to start in that field?
You're Brandon.
I don't know. Yeah. The biggest piece of advice of the dog.
Based on the dog-eat-dog kind of like mentality.
Yeah, I think just that like you're not guaranteed anything and not to get your hopes. Like when I first started, you get a couple of leads and I just like, shit, I'm gonna close all these deals and then like none of them happen. And it's just like, I don't know, I guess not to get discouraged and like, I honestly think what Jay said, like think long term with it. Because if you think very transactionally with, even if you do get a lead and you actually maybe too pushy or try to get your hopes up too high.
People are dumb.
Yeah.
People that have bought these properties are very sophisticated people, very, very smart people. When you come across in a meeting, you come across very salesy. They see it. I think even if we're in a meeting, someone pitching to us, we see the sales side of it. So you don't want to come across in a sales approach. You want to think of like a car salesman. You're humping your leg. You're chasing around the parking lot. You don't want to be that guy. Right? You want to be the guy that at the end of the day, your client calls you and asks you for a piece of advice.
Yeah. And you almost think of it like a partnership.
Yeah,
You're gonna sell them this building.
Yeah.
You're gonna advise them in the rezoning process, and they're gonna build it, and you're gonna lease out their units, and it's like your incentives are aligned. And I think if you think long term, I mean, you have a couple clients that just call you. You might not get anything out of it until
Totally.
I still haven't.
Totally. I have guys that call me that bought the properties from me. They'll ask some advice on stuff. I may not even take a fee on the deal. It might be a small renewal coming up. I might say, hey, the market's this, you should probably charge him this. But that 2 cents for him goes a long way. And when he's ready to sell that building, it's probably come back to you.
Yeah.
So starting off being very informative, understanding what market you're in, working in Victoria, working in Duncan, and I'm in Vancouver, Toronto. It's going to take you 2-3 years to just understand the market. Because commercial real estate, it's a whole new language. You got to understand what cap rates are, where they're heading, where they were, where the comps are, relative to what the property you're working with. Just having as much information to your clients as possible and actually adding the value, because that's what we're being paid for. Yeah.
So just off of that, so that relationship is so important with the buyers, the sellers, whoever you may be dealing with. How would you go about starting that conversation, starting that relationship with whomever you're trying to start it with?
So let's say you're working with a buyer and how you build that relationship.
Yes. Or let's say a seller, maybe like a cold call.
Sure. I think the one that worked for me, or the building of the land use land, I was talking about the environmental issues. The reason I kept maybe putting in your calendar every month, and don't chase the guy every week. Don't be the annoying sales guy calling every week. Chase him every 2-3 weeks, every month. Put it in your calendar. You want to follow up with Sam every month, and give him valuable information. People will love free information. Yeah, absolutely. Just eat it up. So if you can add value in that way, giving him free information, maybe telling him about comparables that have sold. Be transparent. Just say, hey, I'm a junior broker with Colliers. I've started a year, 6 months ago, a year ago. I'm specializing in land. I've sold these properties. This property transacted last month. So this is what the price per square foot was, and the buildable cost was, this is who the developer is, this is what they're planning. They would just chew that information up. Yeah. And just every month or two, just give them a call. Say, how are you doing? Can we meet for a cup of coffee? We're looking for evaluation on your property. If he says no, we leave it for a few months. So always get in front of the client, take him for a coffee, and don't think transaction. Don't think more transactional.
As in, for sales, when you say your piece of advice would be over that, bring value first, and then
Totally.
look at it.
I flip the other way. If I'm in his shoes, what am I looking for in a young broker? I want someone that's dependable. I want someone that's detail oriented. I want someone that has a ton of information. Every time I sit down with a guy, the guy's spitting out 10 different deals: buyer, seller, price per square foot, comp, and eager to learn and a coaching. So being all those things in a meeting,
And I'm just going to wrap up our little conversation.
Yeah.
We'll open up to the floor, but I know a few of us, maybe all of us, are looking to get into co-ops. So do you have any advice approaching Colliers? You said talk to you guys, and then also going into an interview. What kind of stuff?
Yeah, so typically our managing director, Tyler Nolan, he kind of does the recruiting and the interview process. So connecting with Tyler Nolan via, you guys have LinkedIn, I'm on LinkedIn. I know we're actively looking for somebody for January and May semester as well for next summer. So to add Tyler on LinkedIn, maybe reach out, ask for a cup of coffee, let them know you know Jay and John from Colliers. I think that's really about it.
Yeah. So that's what I did. Tyler, I got a session with coffee, and then he didn't answer me, and then Ed, the guy I'm working with there now, he was like, yeah, it's a text call. And then I just called him, and I was like, and he's like, oh, hey, how's it going? I was just about to reply. So you gotta follow up.
So the guys you're dealing with in this industry, they're very much like, you guys see Wolf of Wall Street?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. It's like a religious Bible, man.
but like Wolf of Wall Street in real life. The guys you're dealing with here are Wolf of Wall Street guys in real life. So these guys are, if they don't respond to your email, they may or may not look at their LinkedIn. So just keep calling them. Call them early in the morning. Probably up to 6, 7, 8.
Comparison.
I don't know. I think those guys are hard to get hold of.
Yeah, I guess that.
Sorry, guys, what did you say his name was? Tyler
Dolan.
Dolan?
Dolan. Dolan.
Yeah, so thank you guys so much for coming, and I think we'll open it up for questions.
Yeah, of course.
Have at her.
Feel free. I'm happy to, whatever you guys have, I'll make some most informative for you guys.
I know you guys are talking about this job being very entrepreneurial, which means day to day looks a lot different than it did the day before. But still, long term, you guys see yourselves being brokers until you retire. But even still, even a job that's different every day can get a little bit the same. Do you see an exit plan? If so, where would you be taking this type of experience in another industry?
Sure. For me, I think I was very, very keen on being a broker. That's what I wanted to do when I left UVic. So I saw it as building those relationships, and when those relationships start leading your deals, that's when the fun begins, right? That's when you start transacting some bigger stuff, you get involved in some bigger projects. For me, I feel like right now my vision is I'm probably going to be a broker for a very long time. It takes 3-4 years to kind of get your training wheels off, and then when those are off, you're just everywhere. You're touring, you're doing active deals, you're prospecting, you know exactly. You're very comfortable and confident in those processes. So I think for me, I'll probably be a broker for a very long time. I think exit strategies, if you were to go be a broker and then want to do something else, development is always an option. Developers are always looking for guys who are ex-brokers, deal processes around. You can go work for Eyes as a development coordinator, go work for Abstract, you go work for Townline, Water, Starlight, on the buy side of things. Yeah.
So most of the deals you're dealing with are local. That is correct to assume. Are you ever involved in any international deals at all, or is it more just focused?
Yes, like Vancouver or BC, never in. Well, international. No one from here would be put up.
I actually wanted to mention.
Oh, you did? Oh, yeah, you did. Right.
Yeah, I did this one international. It just kind of fell in my lap. It's pretty funny. I was actually selling, so backstory there, it wasn't even a real estate deal, it was a business deal. So with your real estate license in British Columbia through UBC, the general trading services, you can transact business as well. I was in my first, second year. I had this, I think it's BB salon listed for sale, and that's what I was saying, do every deal, because you get so much valuable experience from this. Mm-hmm. So this business deal, I listed for sale, and some international group out of India called me. Out of the blue. I thought it was like some sort of telemarketing scheme. Because you don't think someone maybe is calling and could call you on listings. So they said they're very interested. They kept messaging me. A month later, they flew from India to Victoria, toured the space, and within 3 or 4 months, they bought the beauty salon. So, but I would say that was a unicorn deal. I'm surprised they still did that deal. But yeah, typically we wouldn't do a whole lot of international. And if we are getting involved in the cross-border stuff, we have Colliers International throughout different offices. So we're doing someone in Seattle, like, hey, I got a client that has property in Victoria. I want to work together with you. And we do collaborations and co-listing that way. You do Colliers and other brokers, CBRE, JLL, they all have offices all across Canada and US. So you'll collaborate with your colleagues in the offices.
And that kind of like deal coming from India, like was that more like once in a blue moon?
That was definitely once in a blue moon.
Just because of location, like if you were working in.
I honestly, I still scratch my head today. Like, I don't know what they were looking for. Benefit to them was they were a beauty school in India. For them to get their bring their license over to Canada, they needed to acquire a Canadian-based license, like a company that had a license in BC, which they did. So they bought it, transformed it, changed everything about that business to their business, and then made 3 full locations in Vancouver. So they basically what they bought from me was a license.
Do you find that you're locked into staying in Victoria because all of your client base is here, or do you think you could go to one of the other Collier offices later down the line?
Yeah, I think people do it, but it's definitely more you are kind of locked.
Yeah, so that's the one thing. If you're a person that likes to bounce around, like I know accountants, lawyers, engineers, they can pick up Victoria, go to Toronto tomorrow, and get a job there with Big 4 or whatever career you decide to do. Commercial real estate, you are where you live and who you know.
As a broker, though,
As a broker,
there is jobs at Colliers, like in research, where like we just had a girl who just moved to Calgary, and they can go wherever.
Because we are entrepreneurial, we are in business. So if I decide to pick up my stuff today and go to Vancouver, I built my relationships in Victoria for the last 6 years, and all my clientele's here. For me to go to Vancouver or Toronto tomorrow, I could do that. I could pick up the phone tomorrow and go to New York, work in the New York office, but I'd be starting with first years. Right? So your competitive edge is where you are, what you know, and where you live.
Getting in touch with, go ahead with your question first.
Well, I was going to ask, what are some skills that you two try your best to improve in order to close, like as many deals as you can?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Being really diligent with your time and not, you can waste a lot of time on, I guess, the wrong things. Like if you're running around with a tenant who's just, maybe they're not actually ready to buy, they're just, like, you can waste your time, and that's really the most valuable resource you have.
Yeah.
I think just being really diligent with it.
Time's the most important as a
Yeah.
broker. Just for us, time is money. If I'm going to give you 8 hours of my time, I'm expecting you don't expect, you're not going to send a billable sheet say, hey, you owe me 8 hours, but you expect that 8 hours will lead to business, right? So I always look at it, if I'm taking a business on, I'll look at it and say, okay, well, what's the probability of this deal closing for me? Are these guys serious? And how much is my fee? So if I can break it down, like, you know what, this deal is probably worth taking on for me, and this deal's maybe not. So no, and that's me learning this in probably the last couple of years. When I was first starting off, my first 3 years, I took on everything. I probably wasted my time on so many deals I didn't make any money on. But I learned so much from those where now I can look back and say, you know what, these are some red flags I probably should have looked out for. When a client's just kicking rocks, looking at 30 listings and then ghosting her for 6 months. Right, so.
Are those the 2 red flags you would take away from that?
Yeah, if you have a client that's looking at 30 listings, doesn't know what they want, not responsive, ends up ghosting you for 2 weeks, time to pounce it.
I forgot my question. Actually, I have one. So you mentioned you started on a salary like lower, and when does that transition to? I believe you said you're full commission now.
Correct.
When does that transition into full commission from salary?
Yeah, so
Or
No.
like when? How does that work?
Yeah, so how it worked for me, and I think it's changed now, but at Colliers, we offer for first-year brokers, as soon as you get licensed, they throw you what's called the acceleration program. So you're in that now, aren't you? I just finished.
I just finished. Yeah.
Just finished the acceleration program. So when you join the acceleration program, and I don't even know they offer the salary anymore, to be honest with you.
Yeah, there's no salary.
It wasn't for you guys. Yeah.
There's just straight commission.
When I first started, there was a salary. And again, that can be negotiated with your MD, what you feel comfortable with. But yeah, the base is not great. It's probably covers your rent, covers your groceries for the month, your 6-pack of beer every weekend, I guess. I don't know, every night. Depends what type of beer you drink. But yeah, no, there's no incentive to keep the salary on. The salary's there to kind of be a little bit of a cushion for you to get trained up. Because that first year you want to be a sponge. You want to be on as many deals as you can, call, learn, build a pipeline for you. So usually that'll be anywhere from a year and a half to take it away. And that's usually a meeting you have with your MD. Say, hey, you know what, I'm comfortable now, where I think I can support myself. Pull my salary, I'll make the commission. But everyone's different.
Yeah, for sure. We had a couple other questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
So just by the sounds of it, it looks like distinguishing like your work mode versus like you being at home and resting. How do you find that balance? Because it sounds like you can always technically do more work whether you're in the office or not. It's like, how do you keep that health mentally from like, I don't know, it depends on how hard you push yourself, but like finding that balance between going hard, calling people, doing the research, and just being you when you get home, you can relax.
But I think it's a lot easier, honestly, like when you like it. It's kind of Joey it sounds like it doesn't really, especially when it's exciting and like thrilling to be working on a deal. You don't really care to work longer on it. It doesn't really feel like it's almost like it's fun.
It's fun. Yeah, it's fun. When you're the research part of it kind of sucks because you're doing a ton of hours and spreadsheets and pulling comps. But when you're actively engaged on an active deal, super thrilling, super fun. It's active. You're negotiating. You're calling your client. You're bashing the other agent on the other side. I'm screwed off. But it's really fun. I think every day you wake up, it's a new opportunity for you. You don't know who's going to call you that day, what meetings you're going to be in that day. It's a new day to make money.
Rahul, you had a question?
Yeah, I was just kind of curious about your valuations and that aspect of things. Is that like tied into the research? Is that things that you guys do, or is the other team who are in charge of that?
Yeah, so we do our own valuations. Like so we'll use our research team to maybe pull some comparables.
Yeah.
Say if we're doing a development, we'll say, hey, let's give me all development comps that have sold in the last 6 months in this area, and they'll give us all the stats, and then we'll put our own valuation together. We call it like a broker opinion of value. I guess we're technically not supposed to call it a valuation.
Yeah.
So we're not appraisers.
Yeah.
It's funny because the appraisers they call us valuations for our comps, so they can value the property. It's a weird cycle.
Gilbert?
So I believe you went to UVic.
Yeah.
And I believe you also went to the University of Calgary.
Yeah.
So looking back at your time, like some of us are now second year, some are in our first year, some in third years. What skill or what, instead of using the word skill, I was saying what thing did you learn from uni, like from your time in school, that was most useful for you as a broker?
Yeah.
And also looking back, what do you wish you had learned? So on both sides, what did you learn that was useful?
Yeah.
And looking back, what did you wish you had learned?
I think there's a couple key skills to be a good successful broker. Being very, very personable. So having those communicative skills, being if that's in small groups, presentations, because a lot of times you're meeting these clients and you gotta present really well in front of your client and confidently. So I think if you're in your first, second, third, fourth year, I wasn't good at it. I hated public speaking. I'm not a good public speaker. But now you're in front of groups of clients and you have to kind of be very opinionated and show up and public speak. So as much as you can, practice public speaking, get comfortable in group settings, team projects. And I guess the second part of that question would be the analytical side. So get comfortable with I guess you guys are taking financial accounting right now?
Right now for 30 years, yeah.
30 years. So understanding financial accounting, the ins and outs of an income statement. We do a lot of income statement pro formas for these investment properties. I'm dealing with a property right now that has 8 different tenants. So I gotta read 8 different leases. I gotta understand what they're paying on a net basis, and then derive a net income out of that. So very, 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 very similar to financial accounting. So that aspect, and then some of the more complex stuff on top of that, like DCFs. Odd time in a big enough project, we do a DCF on a 20 unit industrial tenant play. You guys might use DCF more than we do.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say as many, I guess, like quantitative courses like
Skills.
from school.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, like all the other courses, they're kind of job dependent. Like all the accounting and finance that you could take, I would recommend, even though it's a bit more boring. Would probably be the most applicable. And then even just like you'll learn way more online, like if like or on the job, but it's kind of reality, right? Like if you wanted to learn how to underwrite, you know, a commercial property, there's probably not a class for it. I mean, there might be at UVic, but you go online. There's like this one guy, Spencer Burton, I think his name is, like ACRE. They have like this whole course where you can just watch his videos and you can get really good. Just literally practicing online. You can go to, you know, the Colliers website or any broker's website, find the deal, see the listing price, get all the information, and try to underwrite it yourself. Like if you really wanted to learn, you could get a lot more.
And I think that's a good. I think it's a good skill. If you can show those two things in an interview process, you guys are 22, 23, 24 years old. If you even that old, if you guys can show that in an interview with a brokerage, your name's on the top of the list. So if you can reference, if you can reference comparables, deals that have transacted in the area, whoever developer you're following at the time, like, hey, you know, I know Luke from Rise. He's at our meeting back in November, October. He mentioned they picked up this site this much. They're planning this many units. They're in the rezoning process of the Ascent. They're proposing 3 FSR. Small things like that where it's relates to the market, and obviously your MD will know those things. It's just knowing, understanding what developers are doing, understanding basic financial statements, understanding, and just being confident in the way you speak will go a long way.
So if I understand, the 2 things you would advise to pick up: be good with numbers, be good with people.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Okay.
We deal with people every single day.
Okay.
Every single day. I'm in front of different clients every single day. Some clients are they want more attention than others, right? So if one client comes to me and says, hey, you know what, I've never sold this building before, I want you just to handle everything for me, I'm more engaged in this process. Some client might come to me and say, I've sold 30 buildings in the last 20 years, just give me the basic information, I'll do it myself. So managing expectations, you deal with people every single day, on the phone, via email, in person. It's very, very important. Just understanding basic people skills.
Okay.
Something just popped up. I was thinking about you guys talk about moving, for example, with a question, and how you'd have to restart. One thing a lot of entrepreneurs or salespeople are doing right now is leveraging their social medias. Is that something that you guys have got into, or is Colliers kind of promoting you themselves? What does that look like?
Yeah, we definitely LinkedIn actually works
LinkedIn's very
well.
good for us,
Yeah, not like residential realtors. They do a lot of Instagram and
that's kind of what I noticed.
but I mean, who's gonna care? Yeah.
Who cares if it's one of those?
Yeah. I think it
I don't care if it's
work for
Washington,
them, though, right? Like
it does totally.
but I don't think in commercial, I don't think it would be that relevant.
No.
Maybe it would.
Yeah, like typically the groups we're dealing with, they're not on Instagram or Facebook a lot, so I have a personal Instagram, I post a lot on Instagram. I have LinkedIn, probably my most active, so you guys can follow me on LinkedIn, follow what I'm doing, you see the sales, leasing that we're doing. I'd say LinkedIn probably the biggest platform we use. Colliers has their own platform, they share our listings and all that sort of stuff. Right.
And there is some guys that are doing like their own newsletters. I was trying like Dana, he does, and that's some people who are actually taking that next level.
Yeah.
Not really like the Instagram, Facebook, but they're building their brand.
They're building their brand.
Yeah.
By doing a podcast, which is great, works for them.
Cool. I guess if there's
any questions, go ahead, shoot.
Yeah, so I was just looking at the quarterly report, and they were talking about how outsourcing, advisory, and investment management were big parts of Colliers and how they're able to combat this capital markets right now. I know that's not really what you guys do, but could you elaborate more on those?
Sorry, outsourcing
and advisory.
Investment advisor?
Yeah. So like outsourcing and advisory, and then investment management. If you know.
Yeah, I'm not entirely
saying advisor.
Yeah. So maybe more like the consulting side of things.
Yeah, like we do
Essentially.
have a team in Vancouver. They just came over here. That's like, so say you have a, I don't know, a 20,000 square foot property, and it's, you know in the OCP, which is like the official community plan, that you could build a high rise there. And maybe you don't want to sell it right now because you know if the developer buys it right now, they're going to go through that whole rezoning process, and they're going to sell it at the end, maybe without even building it, and they're going to have that, make that huge value. So pretty much we have a team that came in that they're the, I don't know what they call it, development advisory team.
Yeah.
And they'll actually work with you. You can get paid them hourly. They work with
They take a
you. Yeah, they take a fee, and they'll rezone your whole property. So now your whatever 20,000 square foot lot is now approved to build 80 units on it. And then maybe they'll even build that for you, or they'll sell it at that time for much more. So we do have different services like that, where if we're calling someone and she goes, oh, I don't want to sell now, I want to sell in 4 years, we think, well, and let's maximize your value when you do want to sell in 4 years by rezoning that property, and then when you are ready to sell, you'll make significantly more than if you just sold it now as is.
Yeah.
I'm just curious what proportion of your deals are made up of actual sale transactions as opposed to leases, and which type of deal has more intricacies or could have?
Okay. I think for me, I've been focusing more on sales. So I'd say for me, I'm focusing 75% on more sale based, and 25% leasing. I'm involved in 2 fairly big projects right now. One in a 31 unit strata project, which is just for sale. So that's keeping me fairly busy. And then we won a fairly big pitch last year. You guys know the Western Speedway land? Western Speedway out in Langford. So we won that pitch last year. That's 80 acres of land, industrial zoned, finding like 1 million square feet there of industrial warehouse space. So I'd say that might flip. Right now it's a 75-25, but next year might flip to 75% leasing and 5% sales. So it's really whatever's at the table for you and what's going to provide for you. Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier that some clients need more attention than others. Does your pay reflect that?
No.
No?
It's just kind of you have a standard fee agreement in place that you've negotiated before doing any work. Typically, if you're the seller, I come to you as I'm your broker. I do your evaluation. If you're happy with it, we sign a listing, and once you say, you know what, hey Jay, I've done this 20 times before. I want your market expertise. I know you do industrial. I just want you kind of stick handling it for me. You might be 3 or 4 calls a month. That's about it. You might transact. I'll get the same fee that I would get from you than the other person. That might call me 20 times over the month.
And it sounds like it balances out.
Totally. Yeah. It balances out. There's not much you can do about that. Like, if you want to not take that business on, that's your call. But at the end of the day, money's money. No one wants to say no to money, right? So just maybe understanding what you're getting yourself into before taking a listing on. What I typically do is I do a lot of stuff with somebody else. So it's case by case. So if I think somebody else will add value to me, or maybe if they have more time and I'm more busy, they can stick handle it for me, and we'll negotiate our own fees separately. So there's ways of you can bring somebody on and they can stick handle. You want to say, oh, John, you take lead on this guy, and I'll take lead on this guy. Right, so you can work in that collaborative approach. Better if I'm a sales guy, I like being out in the field. I don't want to be sitting behind the desk all day and answering the phone call. And if John likes being behind the desk all day and picking up the phone, it works out good. Right, so just understanding who you're working with and understanding who you're getting into business with. Getting into business with.
And that's a benefit, I guess, we have at Colliers. It's pretty rare, actually, that only one person's on a deal. We actually do work very collaboratively with each other, so there's a lot of teams, and yeah, like Jay said, a lot of times people will bring other people on. There's usually at least 2 agents on a deal.
Yeah, typically. Yeah. Very much collaborative approach. Because I'd say it's almost more liability on the commercial side versus on the residential side. You're dealing with bigger property values. You're sometimes having more high maintenance clients. It's just having that second person. Sure, you might be giving them portion of the fee, but having a second pair of eyes that you trust on the deal is very valuable.
And is that just usually like two brokers or like are there?
Totally up to, it's case by case.
Okay.
So you might be working 3 deals at the same time, and there might be, all 3 might be your leads that you brought in, and you might, on every single deal, you might be working with a different broker on every single deal. You might bring me on one deal, you might bring John on one deal, you might bring somebody else, whoever you want to bring on, and they want to be involved in that deal, it's up to you and that person.
Okay, I'm going to shoot the real question. I don't know if I'm the only one that has thought about this, like everyone else. I feel like
We want this to be informative for you guys, so I wish I had this opportunity when I was your guys' age.
if you and John were the brokers on a particular deal, and say the deal is worth like, I don't know, 1.4, 1.5, I don't know what the average is.
Sure.
Like, how much are you guys taking home on average?
So you get 3% fee typically. So
Okay.
3% of, what do you say, 1.5?
1.5, if you say 1.5, then 10% is like, I don't know, 150.
So they make it roll, say $1 million deal.
Okay.
You're charging a 3% fee, so the total gross fee is about 30 grand.
Yeah.
But then typically you have a cooperating fee with the buyer's agent. So if somebody brings the buyer, we gotta compensate them a fee. And that's negotiated too in our listing agreement. So I'd say plus or minus.
So say 20 grand.
Between John and I, we might split 20 grand. On a $1 million deal.
Split 20 grand?
And then you get paid, and then you give your percentage to the firm too.
Yeah, so that's gross. So we gross, we split to 10 each, so 10 each, right? And that's our gross number. And then we have the Colliers who take their cut, and our fees are much higher than residential. Like residential, we might pay like $500 a month in desk fees. Commercial brokerages can charge up to 50% on.
But once you do over, I think it's 100. Once you do a certain percentage of gross sales, then your splits get better. So yeah.
So I guess in that example, $1 million, say it's 20 grand split, it's 10 grand. Say we pay Colliers 50%. I get 5 grand, and then then you get an income tax on top of that. So deals, those $1 million deals, you want to keep to yourself. You don't want to bring John on.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Just curious, how long does the average take for such?
Yeah, I would say minimum commercial is always longer than it could be anywhere minimum 3 months, an ideal world 3 months, up to could be a year. But I'd say between 3 to 6 months. So being conscious of that and understanding, sure you might make a lot of money in 4 or 5 months, but then you have 4 or 5 months that you're not making money. So budgeting yourself accordingly and not overspending. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to hear about your process about like vetting offers. Does it usually just come down to the money, or what are other clients like considering?
Yeah, we just had a deal that we had multiple offers on it. We actually went with, the vendor wanted to go with like a slightly lower one just because it wasn't subject to financing. So like in today's market with the interest rates, like, you have deals fall through all the time. People don't have pre-approved financing, so it's a bit of a risk. They can put it under contract, and then during the due diligence they'll actually back out. And this guy just wanted to sell it, so the one offer was slightly less than some of the others, but it was a cash offer, and so it was guaranteed that it was going to close. So he just ended up going with that.
Yeah. So your major things you look for on an offer, obviously price is very important for everybody. Due diligence timelines. So if someone has your standard conditional period of 30, 60, 90 days, anything over that you start questioning why they need anything longer, unless there's environmental issues or anything like that, or rezoning. So yeah, you look for price, you look for conditional period, you look for closing, when they complete on the sale. If it's an extended close, why they need a year to close, why they need 2 years to close. And then if you have conditions, what sort of conditions do you have? And yeah, John mentioned in today's environment, financing is always not a red flag, but you're always kind of questioning it a little bit because you've got to have financing in place. If it's a cash group, that sure might be $100,000 less, but they can close on it 30 days sooner, don't need financing, no one's advising you to go that route. Yeah. But yeah, at the end of the day, we are just advisors. We can't say take this offer, we say, here's our buyer matrix. These 5 offers came in. We ranked them from 1 to 5 and what we think is the best offer. Ultimately, it's your call. we can't influence them. We can advise, but we can't say take this off. Yeah.
If a client, like, so obviously you can't just say take this one. If a client is like genuinely like clueless about something, or is just, I want you to make this decision, or what do you think is the best decision for me? Will you point that one out?
Yeah, we'll say we think this is the best offer.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, we can't sign for them.
Yeah.
So they at the end of the day, they kind of somewhat have to make a decision, and we can say, yeah, you know, we think this is the best offer, and why? And they may take our advice. They may say no. I think otherwise. That's their decision, not ours. Yeah.
If this is like too personal, you can have to answer, but
Sure.
so since you're underneath Colliers, do you get taxed yearly based off of being like self-employed, or is it still considered that you're like working underneath Colliers?
So we get taxed on being self-employed.
Okay.
So we get our T4s every year, and based on our gross commissions, we get taxed according to our tax bracket.
Okay.
And there is like, you can actually set yourself up though as your own corporation.
Yep.
So then you can, there's huge tax.
Yeah,
brackets.
because when the CRA, it's a whole thing there. When the CRA goes through your deal slips and they start seeing, hey, like Jay made X amount this month, and you made zero money this month, but another X amount this month. They start flagging that, and they start hitting you with the highest tax bracket, which is about 50%. So obviously you'll get credit that back when you show your actual earnings at the end of the year, but it'll definitely flag when you get to certain threshold with commission checks. So yeah, you can incorporate up. Instead of paying 35% or 40% income tax, you can pay 15%.
And you just pay yourself a salary.
You pay yourself a salary or dividends every month to keep your bills, whatever expenses you have.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So you mentioned like setting yourself up as a corporation.
Yeah.
Have you done that, or would you do it?
I'm in the process of doing it right now. Yeah.
Okay.
It's very it's hard to say because your accountants will tell you want to make sure you have a house or down payment ready before you crack up. You call it crack up personal real estate corporation, because you don't want to double tax yourself on your down payment of a house. So when you pull money out, let's say I have some money saved up and I want to buy a house tomorrow. If my money's in my crack, I got to tax myself again pulling it out of the crack. So typically what my accountant's been telling me is, hey, make sure if you're going to buy a house in the next couple of years, have it ready to go before you crack up. But again, I was just talk to your own personal accountants on that. I'm no accountant, I'm no lawyer, so don't listen to me. Yeah.
I know with different industries like a financial advisory team, they have a dedicated team that works with them.
Yeah.
As you get bigger and maybe bigger markets, would you have a dedicated team of, say, your own personal research person, your own personal accountant?
Really? Well,
But just for your team, they're not working for another broker, they're exclusively working on your campus.
Our office isn't as big enough, I would say, to have your own research person and maybe your conveyancing person. But our Vancouver teams, their industrial team, they have about 8 or 9 brokers in one team. So they do some sort of profit sharing model that works for them. If you're a senior guy, your splits are much higher. If you're a junior guy, your splits might be 5%, but they might be grossing $15 million in gross commissions a year. So that 5 or 7% is not that bad at the end of the year. $15 million, right? So that team could support a research person, they can support a financial analyst salary, they can support a marketing coordinator. You can, once you start getting into those bigger teams, you can have 4 or 5 support people, for sure. You might have an executive assistant on your own team for all your brokers.
Cool, any more questions? Yeah, I think that's good to close off. I think Julian, do you want to say something about
Any questions, any more comments?
Okay, yeah. If you guys just head to our Instagram, you can go on our link tree and register for the ticket giveaway. There's only 15, so if all of you registered, you might all get a go. But yeah, thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, no problem. It's great. It's nice.
Like you just said, if you guys want to get in touch, You're on LinkedIn?
I got LinkedIn. I brought a couple business cards I can leave around. If there's pictures of my business cards, send me an email. Yeah, I'm fairly responsive.
All right, thank you guys so much for coming out.